Saw dudes, Syntheseps and Glaives got amazing buffs. Syntheseps now grants a 100% Glaive melee damage bonus while surrounded, up from its base 50%. This essentially doubles our outgoing Glaive melee damage from the last patch. This is perfect since Glaives also received a lot of quality of life changes that held them back for a long time. This build takes advantage of Excalibur's exotic perk, Banner of War, and Synthos to achieve 300% Glaive melee damage. Let's get started. Blade Fury offers some pretty great damage at base, but gets its damage buffed by 50% while surrounded thanks to Syntheseps. Make sure you use the heavy attack on tough targets before spamming the light attack to further increase the damage they take. I chose to use Towering Barricade for the increased amount of cover it provides. Synthos now offer handling and reload speed while surrounded, so having Rally Barricade felt redundant. If you want the lower cooldown of Rally Barricade, feel free to use it. Frenzied Blade severs enemies, reducing their outgoing damage by 40%. When switching off of our Glaive, it may be useful to tag a high priority target with this ability. You can use either Grapple or Shackle Grenade. Grapple melees mesh perfectly with Synthos and Banner of War. Shackle Grenade provides another form of crowd control to the build, but isn't entirely necessary. Today's build uses Banner of War and Drinker Slash as its aspects. Banner of War is activated when we kill an enemy with a sword, glaive, finisher, or melee attack. The banner sends out healing pulses periodically, with their frequency increasing with the number of kills achieved after activation. For this build, we are mostly interested in the 25% glaive melee damage buff it provides. Drinker's Lash causes barricade casts to send out a strand lash that tracks enemies and suspends them on hit. It's basic, but it will give us breathing room to recharge glaive shield energy. This build uses Thread of Generation, Mind, Warding, and Wisdom. Generation grants grenade ability energy for each damage instance we deal to enemies. Mind causes killing enemies affected by suspension to grant barricade energy based on enemy rank. Warding grants Woven Mail for 10 seconds upon picking up an orb, and finally Thread of Wisdom causes kills on suspended enemies to create an orb of power with a 10-second cooldown between activations. Let's cover the Pokey Stick armor. First off, the helmet had Harmonic Siphon, Special Ammo Finder, and Dynamo. Dynamo can be swapped for Heavy Ammo Finder if you want more consistent drops. On Syntheseps, there was Grenade Kickstart, Firepower, and Bolstering Detonation. For the chestplate, I equipped Charge Stub, Loosened Blades, and a Variable Resistance mod. The flip-flops had Insulation, Innervation, and Stacks on Stacks. And lastly, the mark had Powerful Attraction, Reaper, and Bomber. This build is all about getting up close and personal with the enemy. Even with the Glaive protecting us, I think it's important to have high resilience. It's necessary to reduce our barricade cooldown and protect us from stray shots that don't get blocked by our shield. The only other stat I would really worry about is Discipline, since it actively helps reduce our grenade cooldown, whether it's Grapple or Shackle Grenade. If you want even more Glaive builds since they got buffed, drop a sub. I'll be sure to create more builds for them as the season goes on. I have one weapon loadout for today, but there are plenty of alternative weapons. Weapon Loadout 1 uses Round Robin or Rufus's Fury, Excalibur or Edge of Action, and either Cataphract GL3 or Thin Precipice. I know it's a ton of options, but I'll get through them all as fast as I can. Round Robin hits like a truck and chunks tougher units for a bit of damage without much help. Keep Away and Hatchling helps fix some of the issues that plague hand cannons, particularly the 120 RPM variety. Keep Away buffs range and reload speed, and Hatchling provides some ad-clear utility. Since 120 RPM hand cannons excel at hitting precision shots, Hatchling is super easy to proc with some decent aim. Rufus's Fury is a gun that I use when I don't want to think about aiming. The go-to role for me is Demolitionist plus Hatchling. Demo provides extra grenade energy, which I find especially useful when running Shackle Grenade. Hatchling is on this gun for the same reason as it is on Round Robin. Excalibur is my favorite exotic glaive, but that's besides the point. All glaives got a plethora of buffs, which I will now put on screen. All glaives got a 30% projectile speed increase, a 25% PvE projectile damage increase, and a 0.75 second to 0.2 second reduction for the time between firing and melee. Shield energy now recharges when the glaive is held at 1% a second. Excalibur makes use of all of these buffs the best, in my opinion. Excalibur's projectiles hit the hardest out of all special ammo glaives, so they'll be even better. Excalibur has a passive where having a Void Overshield increases its melee damage by 20%. In combination with Syntheseps, Banner of War, and this passive, its melees will deal triple its base damage. Edge of Action lacks the same melee damage as Excalibur, but offers much more support. The mini bubbles it shoots now grant bonus reload speed, handling, and a small amount of stacking bonus damage in addition to the Overshield. This is a lot of bonuses, and the global glaive buffs made it even easier to use. Keep in mind that the bubbles now have 2400 health instead of 8000. This is a pretty big nerf, but as long as you play smart, this shouldn't hurt too much. Cataphract GL3 is a great Strand heavy weapon for burst DPS and light ad clear. I recently got a great roll with Envious Assassin Bait and Switch, which does very heavy boss damage. Of course, you'll always want to have a roll with spike grenades for the best damage possible. There are a lot of other great perk options though, like auto-loading and explosive light, or Demolitionist and Chain Reaction for ad clear. Finally, we have Thin Precipice, a sword I believe not enough people have. Sword kills proc Banner of War and sword damage is buffed by it, meaning that it works extremely well with the build. I'm using Thin Precipice as an ad clear tool. The current roll that I'm using is Jagged Edge, Swordmaster's Guard, Relentless Strikes, and Chain Reaction. Using this weapon will drastically limit your engagement range, so you will have to close the distance. Use a Sword Guard or Glaive Guard to approach combat carefully. I'll cover the game loop before the video ends. Begin combat by casting a barricade, making sure to hit an enemy with Drenger's Lash to suspend them. Kill the enemy using a weapon to spawn 2 orbs and collect them to proc Woven Mail. Proceed by firing Excalibur to build up shield energy and melee some enemies to death. All that you need to do from here is use Excalibur's melee and kill suspended enemies to repeat the loop. For the most damage, try to maintain a void overshield by guarding with Excalibur. Rinse and repeat. I am super happy with the glaive changes. Not only did it fix all of the biggest issues, but it also made glaives fun to use. They are defensive weapons, yet they feel nice when playing offense. Of course, the Syntheseps buff made a massive difference and contributed a lot to the build. Anyway, let me know what you think. As always, thank you all for watching, and happy farming.